happening now? Because, of course, the whole new chapter and the criticisms is, well, but you had 10 years. You could have done some of these things. Some of the things that they are promising, I think, are low-hanging fruit that weren't necessarily that big ticket.
Correct.
They could have done in the last 10 years. Meanwhile, the UNC now, they've been putting forward proposals too. But I find in both instances, I'm not really impressed with the policy proposals by either side. They're lacking a little bit, for me, details, especially how, the UNC in particular, is how you're going to pay for that. I said that, I think, maybe even before Stuart Young said it. So it's not because he said it, I'm saying it, but I agree with him on that one. How is the UNC going to pay for all the things they're promising? With regards to the policies, and from what people you've spoken to, just in general, with youths or adults, are the policy proposals hitting? Are they good enough on either side?
Well, on the youth side, for the PNM, people are liking what the PNM has proposed because they've been doing great work for the last 5 years in the Ministry of Youth Development and National Service.
Yes.
So on that platform, they've won over a lot of youth. In terms of energy, I think the PNM has kind of won over that because Stuart Young being the Prime Minister, being there, he has been able to speak particularly about energy. But people want to hear about bread and butter issues, and I think that's where the UNC has won the campaign because at least, but you still have to wonder how are you all going to pay for all these things. Yes, you are saying, okay, people, we're going to try for you to have a lot more money in your pocket and stuff, but you can say that, but when it comes to the fine print, the details, how are you going to afford this for the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago? What are you going to do to lower the cost of food and medicine and whatever else, you know, the basic necessities?
But I mean, is the general population asking that question? Are they concerned about that? Because this won't be the first time, if the UNC can't follow through with their campaign proposals, that campaign promises won't follow through. The PNM's last general election, there's probably several things that they did not follow through with, as well as the time before that, as well as the partnership before them, and so on. You could go back down to Pandey and Manning and say the same thing. Like, it seems, is the population really asking themselves, well, how likely are these things to happen? And weighing that with and assessing that to contribute if I vote for these people or not? Or are they just kind of taking, oh, well, this is what they're promising and I like that, it sounds better, so I'm going to vote for them?
I think the population, they are assessing that from that point of view. How are we going to pay for these things? How are we going to afford these things? We are not where, our politics is not where it used to be 15 years ago, whereby people are not really concerned about the economics and the things behind it. People are now paying attention and they are asking those questions.
Is it because of what happened within the last 10 years? Because, I mean, one of the things I've been cautioning people about, don't just consider what the PNM has done or not done. Think about also the fact that we've had challenges from external sources, and more importantly, those challenges will probably continue. So we have to look at, that's the thing, the UNC said, stop living in the past, but then we pointed out what the partnership did. It's like, that's a whole different environment. Yes. The circumstances were different, right? We have to look at who could deal with the challenges of the future. And perhaps the country is now waking up and saying, oh, wait, the oil and gas money is not a guarantee. Even with these new fines and new rounds of bidding, it could all go away. Yes. Because, you know, politically, internationally, green energy comes back in favor, and all of a sudden Shell and BP want to be out again, and we're stuck holding the bag. Is it that we're being forced to be more aware? The hard times now are forcing us to not just be as complacent as before.
That's absolutely correct, and you said it. We are now forced to become more aware. We are now forced to do our own research. We are now forced to read and to try and understand for ourselves what are the circumstances or economic circumstances, because things are changing on a daily basis. I think that's where the PNM, that's what they are trying to sell. Who is that leader that's going to be able to take a phone call at 2 a.m. in the morning and to pivot the country, as opposed to what the UNC is offering? That's kind of what the two sides are offering, even though they would have been in power for the last 10 years.
Are the politicians kind of keeping up with that change in dynamic? Because I would argue that I don't think they are. I think they're still a little bit on the model of yesteryear, and they're not necessarily appreciating that at some point the population is going to be more discerning and it's going to be more sophisticated because they have to, right? And I'm hoping that they would adjust, because I've been telling people, look, the politicians listen to you. But I don't know if they're fully aware of, you know, these new challenges need a new approach.
Well, I think they are trying to. I think that's what the PNM is trying to sell, whereas the UNC is trying to sell something that we've heard from them over the last 10 years, if I'm being honest, and because I'm looking at the campaigns on both sides, and so the PNM is trying to say, okay, yes, we understand, we've been there for the last 10 years, we understand that these are the challenges. And I think even Stuart Young said it when he spoke last night. He said, yes, I understand that I've been there, but I haven't been the one that's been able to make the decisions. But I think that doesn't discount from the fact that he was literally at the right hand of Dr. Ali at every step of the way, and he could have said, Dr. Ali, let's try this approach, let's probably do this differently. Whereas Kamala Pasalbi's sister is now trying to say, okay, we did this for you while in government, but the world then is a completely different world from what we are seeing now.
Is Kamala coming across more effective now? Because I would argue, in the last 10 years, there were a lot of times when I didn't think what she had to say was very effective at all. But I can't necessarily say that outside of how you're going to fund everything, right? I can't necessarily say that now. Yes, I could probably nitpick, and there's so much, content that to be honest, I'll probably be aggravated trying to watch it all. But she is coming across to be a bit more effective now, like how she's positioned herself. Would you agree with that?
Effective to an extent.
As a campaigner, on the campaign trail.
On the campaign trail, in terms of her speaking notes, possibly yes. But I still do think that what we are being fed is not the best, and probably the UNC could very well do with a new leader, to be quite honest.
Yeah. If they had a new leader, do you think, because the PNM as the incumbent should be at a serious disadvantage. It's just natural.
Correct, yeah.
You have more things to criticize because you did things. The opposition didn't do anything. So you don't have any policies to criticize there. With a different leader, do you think the UNC would have had a clear-cut greater advantage? Because they should have the advantage in this, naturally. But it doesn't seem like they have as big of an advantage as they should.
I believe so. If they had a new leader going into this election, they would have had a stand-up way better chance than now.
I wouldn't ask who. I'll just ask, is there anyone in your mind that could have been a new leader for the UNC?
Right now, from the current set of people
because
who are there?
it would have had to have been, right?
Yeah, well, yeah, obviously.
Yeah.
No. Because, no, honestly speaking...
So she might actually still legitimately be the best person for the job to lead the party?
Well, I am not saying that she's the best person for the job, but in the current...
Based on who they have?
Based on who they have right now, at one point in time, I said Saddam Hussein. That was a couple years ago.
That was when he was new?
Yeah, but then I feel that he has stuck to that Kamala brand, and he hasn't evolved in the politics enough for me to say, yes, I could support this young man being a future whatever.
I would argue that as much as he's following the Kamala brand, he is less effective than she is with regards to his public speaking. Not with regards to his tone and delivery, but with regards to his content and what he chooses to say and the angles that he takes, I find are disappointing for someone. He's making communicating errors that he shouldn't make.
Yes. I think when he came in the Senate in 2017, he was much more effective. I guess they were probably trying for a position because, elections was coming up in 2020. So they had to sell themselves. Had themselves well. And so I think that's what it is. So now he has realized, okay, I got the position, I'm going back up again. Why? I don't have to stress, He's right there at the side of Kamala.
Wow. And now, you did say that, okay, the population might actually be changing their perceptions because we are facing harder times and it might get harder, right? Similar maybe to the, I don't know, I guess you weren't around for this. I was born in that era, so I have a little bit of a perception when Kellogg's weren't on the shelves and the fruits available were not apples and grapes and strawberries, right? That still kind of amazes me that we have all these foreign things. When I was 4 years old, we didn't. But we have this period where the population is maybe going to be more demanding, hopefully, more perceptive, hopefully, right? Now, to switch gears, is the media doing enough to kind of move with the population, to support that shift in dynamics, to support a more sophisticated dialogue, and to feed more detailed information to the public?
I believe they are trying, but the pace isn't fast enough. Yeah, the pace, we're not keeping up to speed enough with what we should be doing in the media. Yeah,
is it that, the challenges, because, academically, new media versus old media and the challenges of the industry now to monetize things and to stay afloat, it's something that maybe didn't exist 20, 40 years ago, right? Is that what's kind of holding them back, or is it that we ourselves as an industry, we're not forward-thinking enough to try to be more sophisticated and more, in some ways aggressive, in some ways more objective, in some ways more detailed?
No, I think it's that we ourselves as an industry are not doing what we need to do to get up to speed to where we should be, where we are, and where media is internationally.
Like in what way?
In another way, in just the way we disseminate information. Sometimes simple things that we can literally fact check for ourselves, we just don't. And we just give out what the politicians says, yeah.
I mean, this show is an opinion show. There've been opinion columns in newspapers for time immemorial. Is it that perhaps we need more content like that, but carefully, because you don't want to do like certain international news stations where you kind of blur the lines too much between news reporting and opinion pieces.
Yes, correct.
But potentially, would you argue that we need more opinion to drive conversation?
In the media itself, I would say no, simply because of the fact that there's social media now. And so anyone can get their opinion out. I can post something on Facebook now, and it's shared by thousands of persons. And that would potentially reach more persons than a media house would reach.
But I mean, but my point is that's still, when you share your opinion, that's still opinion. So that's what I'm saying. Like,
opinions, let me
moving away from just, this is the facts and report the facts, and we might have some columns in the newspaper, but we don't really engage, because ideally reporters should be opinionated, and they should have a mechanism to express that opinion separate from the news reporting, so that we don't blur the lines too much and people kind of take opinion as fact.
Yes, you're correct in that sense. Yes, we should have opinions, but I also think that it should be backed up by facts.
Well, yes, of course.
Yeah, it has to be backed up by facts, and that's the only way we can evolve.
Now, let's close with the whole, I guess, situation, young people. You saw we had a special episode last week. I also had touched on this topic with a couple other contributors on Talking Point, Mark Anthony Peter and Ashraf Ali. Youth in politics. There's a couple of things. One, do you think youth are more engaged in politics this go around?
Yes, most definitely. More than 2020. Because in 2020 it was said that the youth would be the one to decide. But I think now more than ever, the youth are involved in politics, are interested in politics.
What changed?
What changed? They became more aware. They realized that it was important, and it is important for them to become aware of their circumstances. And they realized that things are affecting them, because the things that their parents would have been able to afford for them 20 years ago or 15 years ago, their parents can't do. And so now it is the responsibility of a lot of the youth to now come out and do it on their own, or to now find a way to persuade their parent to afford whatever it is.
Is it that they're graduating from university and finding, oh, the job market is real stress? Because that's what Mark was saying. He's also a bit of an educator, so he works with a lot of young people. He himself is going through that transition, even though he's a couple of years older than you. Job market, not easy.
Yes, that's correct.
The reality is?
Yeah, the reality is that information is out there much more quicker, and they have siblings who would have graduated university or whatever, and they've now realized, well, it really isn't that easy as it seems. So I need to probably pivot myself and not just do a degree, but do something else.
Are young people taking up issues, or is it hasn't reached that point yet? Because, you know, in the States, young people will champion issues, but in TNT, well, at least before now, right, and we'll see how far the changes that you're describing, it seems like young people don't want to be involved in the news and read the news and understand what's going on to then decide, I need to pick up myself and speak out. I
think they are picking up issues. The pace, again, is obviously a factor that we need to consider. And obviously, and funding is always a factor with championing causes and picking up issues. That's a major factor.
I mean, I guess, although certain grassroots things don't necessarily need funding.
True, you're correct about that.
Are the universities becoming more of a vocal point for debate, or not yet? As far as you're aware?
Yes, I would say yes. Yeah, they are becoming a vocal point for debates and stuff. Now,
let's go one step beyond, because back during the last THA election, the day after or 2 days after, you mentioned the fact that you yourself, you're not necessarily, and your peers aren't necessarily looking for actual professional careers in politics, because youth parliamentarians and actual parliamentarians is not the same thing. It's kind of like amateur wrestling in the Olympics and professional wrestling in WWE. It's not the same thing.
Well, interestingly enough, a lot of youth parliamentarians have now joined political parties. Like,
Right.
I know for a fact that a lot of people who I sat with years ago.
That you sat with.
That
so
I
we're
sat
not talking
with. Even
younger
after,
ones.
there are people who were there before me and who are there after me.
Okay.
They have now joined political parties.
And they weren't looking to do that before.
No, before no.
So there and all, the dynamics that you mentioned, that also changed as well.
Yes, dynamics has changed, yeah.
Now the question is, do you think, did they change for positive reasons, or are they looking to kind of go into the system, and are you afraid that some of them might be caught by the system? Because that's usually what happens. You go in with the best intentions, and then the system catches you, and you turn into the thing that you complained about, right, in the past.
Well, yeah, Saddam Hussein was a youth parliamentarian.
Okay.
so that should tell you. I mean, he wasn't there in my time, but he was there a couple of years before me. Farley Augustine was a youth parliamentarian at one point in time.
Okay.
Yes. He represented Trinidad and Tobago at Commonwealth Youth Parliament in, I think, 2008.
Right.
So a lot of them would have been there before. Dr. Rudolph Munla was a youth parliamentarian.
Well, I mean,
far back,
that's a different context.
That's a different context, but yes, a lot of them are moving into system. Some are being caught by it and moving away from what they've been taught and what they learned. And so, I think the dynamics are changing. That's what I should say.
Is there hope that we'll get new, fresh blood that will maybe change things to be a bit more professional in the future? When I say professional, more about the issues, more about policies, more about having a plan, a vision, a mission, all of that. These kind of things that we take for granted, that we don't always see political parties have a sort of, this is the vision, and this is the strategy, and this is how all these policies align with that strategy and that vision. But also just to have fresh politicians, right? I think the PNM, when essentially just before Dr. Rowley stepped down, one of his last swan song appearances as Prime Minister, political leader at the PNM media event, the message, maybe it wasn't as overt as now, right, but the message was youth movement, have some kind of change, get new fresh blood into there. These new youth parliamentarians, because that was one of the questions, where are the new politicians coming from if the youth parliamentarians aren't going to do it? Right. Well, what about the rest of the youth? There's probably not, right? Not everybody is like Kareem Marcel that's going to have that story, right?
Yeah. I mean, he was a youth parliamentarian as well.
Well, there you go. But he's not just a youth parliamentarian. He had like other things as well with the community.
Yes, that's correct.
And stuff like that. So it's not like we have a whole set of people like that just growing on trees where, I'm a youth activist and I'm going to go into politics. Yeah, we just pick them off. So is there hope that we have the next generation, maybe not secured, but potentially down the pipe?
Yeah. To an extent, yeah, we do. A lot of them, once they get involved, they can make meaningful changes, and they will make meaningful changes. That's what I would say.
Do you think that we will have meaningful changes? I guess that's the real question.
Yes.
And coming out of this election, what are you hoping to see, or what do you think might be a significant change from the norm? Because that's what I'm hoping to see. It's not that I want to see a party win. It's that because we could have any party win, but the dynamics might remain the same. Now, the TPP automatically is a new element that in theory is going to cause the outcome to not look quite the same, right? But I want a new dynamic because I feel as long as the pre-existing dynamic continues, you kind of just have two parties kind of trading off between opposition and government.
I know what you mean.
And they don't have that incentive to compete.
Yes.
Right? Because I find...
To push a little more.
Yes, because I find they could, both of them could push more. And it's not hard. It's not like to get 1% more, we need to have 70% effort. Right. I'm thinking if you give like 5% effort, you might get 10 or 15% improvement, right? And that's what I don't want to see, that kind of status quo kind of remains, even if the UNC wins.
Well, on the PNM side, they've been saying that, okay, if we win, we want to do things a lot more quicker, a lot more faster. We've been there the last 10 years trying to get experience, as they put it, fighting for the country, defending the country, whatever is the case. And so I think for them, it would have to be that it cannot be business as usual. They would have to now say we have to take things a little more seriously, because it would mean that they've been there going on 15 years if they serve a full term, 15 years. And the fact that the country chose to elect you once again for a third straight time would mean to say that, okay, the margins, yes, might be closer, which is what I think. But if they are elected, once again, it would have to mean that they have to change. They have to do differently from what they did in the last 10 years. On the UNC side, I think they would not have to prove that they are not the UNC of 2010 to 2015, where corruption is concerned, because there were and there still remain serious issues and serious questions of corrupt practices during that administration.
All right, let's take a break. When we come back, we'll continue conversations as well as we'll open the phone lines. I know not a lot of callers. They call us fed up of politics, Camille. Right? But okay, it is what it is. The election 2025, it's just 2 episodes, well, 1 and a quarter episodes of Talking Points left to go, I guess, before the elections. Well, that's not entirely true. We do have a Monday show, but we can't talk politics then. But we'll be right back after this. You can have your say. Stay tuned. For every creed and race, we must look beyond the colors. Don't miss WESN's election coverage as we break down all the results and consider the way forward to the next chapter of Trinidad and Tobago. With Dr. Shane Mohammed, Karen Nunez-Rushera, Camille A.O. Pascal, Ashraf Ali, David Abdullah, Curtis Williams, and other business leaders across Trinidad and Tobago. Hosted by veteran journalist Andy Johnson, alongside myself, Sean Michael Small. Looking beyond the colors for election 2025. Your voice, your vote, your future.
My name is Dr. Stephen Carroll, the CEO at Community Hospital of Seventh-day Adventist, and we are committed to making good private healthcare affordable.
For all your medical needs, including dental, radiology, laparoscopy, behavioral and mental health, along with many other services, contact us for more information at 235-5407.
Community Hospital of Seventh-day Adventist,
where good private health care is affordable.
And we're back here on Talking About the WSN, Sean Michael Small alongside Camille A.O. Pascal, the former parliamentarian of the Youth's National, Regional, Commonwealth level, and one of our contributors here, youth contributor, to some extent political commentator as well on Talking Point. Now we'll open the phone lines. You can call and have your say. I know, yes, it's politics and the campaigning, and there's only so much things that might interest the public, but we'll still have the phone lines up for the last 10 minutes. In case anyone wants to call in. And of course, you can call in other things as well and ask about other topics. That's fine as well. But you made an interesting point that the PNM is basically going to be a victim of their own success if they win, because there'll be a 3-term incumbent now. Yes. And if a 2-term incumbent is going to be at a disadvantage, a 3-term incumbent is either going to solve all the problems and be the second coming of salvation, or they're going to have, you know, twice the height of Everest, a mountain to scale.
Yes, that's
right. Do you think that the PNM could potentially change or be more effective? Because Karen always says the best indicator of future behavior is previous behavior. The rate that they're going, are they changing enough so that they don't end up in a similar situation that they are in now, where people are saying, for the last 10 years, you didn't fix it. You know, now they're going to say the last 15 years, you didn't fix it. Why are we going to believe you? Or is it that they're going to have to spend the time in opposition? Well, before we get to that, we have someone on the line. Good morning, caller. You on here? Caller, good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Small. You and your young lawyer on the side of your dad. Listen, this election is one of the most important elections on our land here. I want to see a new opposition after election in that parliament. For quite a while now, son, you know I have been calling you all and letting you all know our forensic investigation on the interference of the running of our land here, right? We haven't shown ourselves for decades. When I say decades, hundreds of years. But we are here and we are looking on at the settlers, national, which is they call themselves the two major race, right? Now, the people that I have seen putting themselves back with this granny, I don't want to see none of them in parliament. They have questions to answer, number one, to the young children and the young people of this country. And they haven't answered it yet. She hasn't even called on her allies who is involved in the judiciary to do certain things to create the strengthening of the criminal element. Sure, she may not know some of the things that were planned, like interference with water for her constituents in central area, to suffer the people for water just for them to go against the PNM. These are the type of things we have been seeing going on, right? Mr. Stuart Young, I wish him all the best, the strength and courage to carry us forward. Youth, all you have to put all your finger and keep this man there in power. Makila, we would like to see you in parliament as an opposition to learn certain things about the culture of the different races in the land. If you don't know that, you will do stupidness, and then Britain and America go out to fly here quick. Right? This is what we are staying down right now. So, gentlemen, I wish you all the best. Do the right thing. This government, they say, is 10 or 9 on something years. In our book, in the earlies when I called you and Keaton when you all was on the station there together, this government needed a whole 10 years to get this country on a right footing. The kind of jam that old man gets since he come in with the 15% increase salaries, and that money wasn't there, and then 100 school, I've never built 100 school one time. But all over the country have school. So why she couldn't build 3 schools, open it to show off 100 schools, and you just start them and that's it, you're gone. Be careful.
Thank you,
May
caller.
the Great Spirit bless you all.
Thank you, caller.
Good morning.
Okay, we have another caller waiting on the line from Arima. Good morning, caller. You on the air?
Morning.
Morning.
Morning, caller. Go ahead.
Now, I listened to your conversation, right? And I wanted to understand this. It's not about mostly youths as new parliamentarians. You know. The system itself had a change. And the persons who put themselves up cannot put themselves first, the financial sector, and we the citizens third. As the previous caller was talking about, let me give you an example. If you're on the bus route in St. Joseph, as you pass Wassa, the piece of compound between Wassa and Bangladesh is QF Junior Second. When it was the state of the building, to how it was, to how it is now, and the fact that you're seeing a structure there with a garden means that somebody's living on the premises, and the government didn't really find the time to finish the school. Also, thinking about in Presal, the DB campus, the Kuva Hospital. We have to move away from trying to spite the other party and thinking about the needs of the citizens. Now, I would say he already did a fairly all right job. But the only blemishes he have against his name, one, you see when he tried to follow workers for not taking the COVID vaccine, Two, you see, 4%, in my view, if the government had rejected the Salaries Review Commission and take 4% like everybody else, PNM couldn't allow this election, no matter what Kamala said. Have a good day, Jen.
That's a good point. I do think if they did that, that would have come across really strong politically. But we do have two callers waiting, one Dabadi and two Tupuna. Dabadi first. Good morning, caller. You on the air? Caller, good morning.
Yeah, morning.
Go ahead, caller.
Yeah.
You're on the air. Go ahead.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. Pleasant morning to Sean and your guest. So I'm concerned this morning about crime and the manner in which it has been approached to by government, NGOs, all of us for the past 50 years or so. I think that, and it might sound a bit funny, you have a caller from San Fernando that makes some comment, and I myself, I think that it is not from quality or programs at the highest level, but it is simply from an operational level and the executive of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. I think that's where the problem is, and I'm looking forward to a different set of operations after the election and a stronger leader who might be able to dictate to, although the police service is supposed to be independent in some sense, I think most of the problem and most of the crimes committed comes from operations, lack of proper training. And if they listen to your program, they learn a lot. Thanks for the opportunity. And your co-host, is it Camille? Camille, he has some excellent points that you should listen to this morning. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, caller. That's why he's here. That's why I wanted him here. Thankfully, he was able to make himself available. Hopefully, he'll make himself more available. We have another caller on the line from Tunapuna. Morning, caller.
Good day.
Morning,
Caller
caller.
from Tunapuna.
Yes, go ahead.
Gentlemen, first, I must express myself and say how I feel about both of you. There's a lot to be desired from both of you where objectivity is concerned. One is a former PNM youth speaker. One comes from a former PNM home. And that is what you all trying to sell for the population. No, people will get lost with this TV station because of that nonsense that you all are trying to perpetuate this. What about if UNC win? What you all will do? What you all are going to do if they win by 21-20? That is imagine, because they've gone straight down the rail. The election has just gone straight down the rail. And 21-20 would be the result. UNC would scrape it there. I thought they would have done better. But they're going to win 21 seats out of the 20, closer than I thought. And I'm asking, what are you all going to say about that? Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, caller. Well, I mean, we were talking about the campaigning and the political careers. If Kamala wins, because the context was if Stuart Young lost, if Stuart Young wins.
Correct.
If Kamala wins, her age is going to be more of a factor than anything else. Politically, that's not as politically relevant, I guess you could say. That's just a reality of his situation. Stuart Young being younger, there's a bit more to consider.
Yes, right? Because he could still make a comeback.
He could still make a comeback, although not necessarily.
Exactly.
I would go far saying,
unless
unless the party has like successive defeats you know, somebody else after him loses, right?
I think, as I mentioned, that's why Dr. Rowley has stayed on, because of that whole transition, when or if not.
Now, I'll say this, caller. Let me put it this way. My life would be easier if I was a PNM a canary. The term doesn't come to mind. You know, because if I was that biased for the PNM, one would argue then that I should be in their good graces and be receiving all kind of things, when the reality is I've been critical enough on the PNM where I've been warned to stop being so critical of the PNM, right? And I'll just leave it at that. Am I going to necessarily stop being critical of the PNM? No. I'll try as much as possible not to. There are times when I want to be sarcastic, and that comes across as insulting. So I have to try and at least be respectful to all politicians, because I also want to be sarcastic with regards to certain aspects of the UNC as well, the NTA, the PEP, and the Patriotic Front, etc., etc. But try to be respectful. But at any day, I'm an equal opportunity critic, right? And everything that Kemal said, I can't disagree with it. So regardless of what his affiliation is or is not, similar to Dr. Sheikh Mohammed, who, again, when it's time to speak about the party that they're supposed to be biased for, they're willing to just say what they think truthfully, and it's in line with what I think for the most part. So I'll just leave that there. But one of the caller brings up a good point. We didn't necessarily mention about the other parties outside of the TPP.
Yes.
Just in general, do you think they're going to be much of a factor in this general election or no?
TPP is trying to be, and they might well be.
Well, they might achieve their objectives with the 2 seats.
Exactly. And I think it's, as I said, it's also a test for them, because remember, THA elections are due anytime between, I think, December and March. December this year and March of next year.
I would argue they haven't done enough to hurt themselves.
So the thing about it is that this will be a great test for them to see what the Tobago population thinks of them and all that transpired between.
Kind of like what happened in reverse with the TOP. They won the national but then lost the THA and then it fell apart.
Yeah, something like that.
But what about Patriotic Front and NTA?
I think...
Are they splitting the votes?
I just wish Michaela would have been on the ground in the last election. If not 2020, at least local government in 2023.
Right.
I wish she was on the ground, and I wish she had some candidates in different...
Is it because of financing, or is it because of other reasons?
Well, I can't say, but I wish she would have been on the ground. That's what I would say.
You wish she would have started the process earlier.
The process a little earlier, yeah.
Is her messaging effective? Because I do feel, to some extent, people are liking what she says.
Yes, people are liking what she says, yeah.
Okay. We have Trinity, I believe, on the line. Good morning, caller. You on the air?
Good morning, gentlemen. Good morning to Sean Michael Small and your guest.
Morning.
Interesting conversation you all are having there. First of all, let me talk to, this is to everybody, to youths, especially your youngest. You cannot govern based on a lie. You have to govern based on truth. Throughout your life of governance, or throughout the period of governance, you can put in a truth here, and come with a lie. Right? I prefer, for governance, I like the Singapore model. Lee Kuan Yew, when they took independence many years ago. And he governed with, some people say, an iron fist, and some people don't like me comparing Lee Kuan Yew to Eric Williams, chalk and cheese, but it doesn't matter. We have our opinions on how people govern. Let us start by the Mr. Rowley's stance with the email gate. Email gate was a lie. It was confirmed by Google that it was a lie. So he lied in Parliament. That is poor governance. So that disqualifies him from being an effective leader. If you found any lies during the life of the opposition, that is not effective leadership. So effective leadership has to be based on truth, has to be based on sound management, it has to be based on governance. Your guest will not know, and he can ask his parents or his grandparents, about the anti-corruption drive that was taking place within the PNM that kind of failed circa 1976. I'm guessing you all were born after that.
Yeah.
But we older folks remember it, right? And there was no Kamala. There was no red and yellow. There was no rum and roti politics. Well, there was rum and roti, and there was no Panday back then to quarrel about. The arguments were among themselves, and they had fallouts. So when you have a prominent person like Carlton Phillips falling out with a former PNM man, falling out with the PNM turn on him, right? Mm-hmm. And that is what the PNM does, and that is the history of the PNM that people have to understand. I understand the discussion this morning, but it has to be, I know the last caller was passionate, he's entitled to his opinions, but governance and truth is a straight line. right? And if you're going down the road governing a process and you're trying to manage a process and it's not working, you switch. And that's what management is about. And that is what the Singapore cabinets over the years since independence have done. If something not working, you come to the people who recognize this is not working and you switch. You switch one time. You know, so you cannot compile lies. Now, let me give you a little story. I was listening to Gerard Furness, Miss 1995, 1996, talking about Dr. Rowley's ability to argue and an ability to hold a debate, right? And it was on TV, right? Back then. And I was agreeing with the line who made me. I said, I'm agreeing with Gerard Furness. He's correct in what he's saying. Dr. Rowley thinks on his feet. Mm-hmm. But very few of you understand when you analyze what he's saying. It's a pack of nonsense. That's my view. Some may agree, but it's a pack of word salad. So a man could get up on his feet and talk nice and stomp and walk the walk in terms of his words. But at the end of the day, it's word salad. You have to analyze what is being said, analyze the history, go back and ask your parents and your grandparents. They would have a biased view or non-biased view, but keep analyzing what's going on. There was corruption prior to 1986, and we have to know that. Mm-hmm. But people don't accept that, but we have to know it. There was fallout. During that time, the whistleblowers within the government were chastised. Within the government, I mean the PNN. So an examination of 1956 to 1986 could tell us that, honestly. Fellas, have a nice day.
Thank you. So he brings up a good point. A lot of people want to bring up the Singapore model. They kind of made certain decisions at the beginning. We obviously don't have the opportunity to change what decisions we make at the beginning of how what tone we're gonna set. Mm-hmm. With regards to corruption, this is one of the things that I think is unfortunate. Unless the voting population is the engine of change, we can't just ask the politicians who we assume are corrupt on some level, hey, we want you to fix corruption because you're too corrupt. If you understand what I'm saying. Mm-hmm. Am I correct in that statement?
We can't ask. It's just how we do it. It's just the.
Because I would say how we do it is to vote in new politicians, and hopefully they're not as bad as some of the ones that we have now.
Then that's
as opposed to just hoping the status quo somehow fixes a problem they to some degree participate in.
That's what we say. We want choose the lesser of the two evils. That's one of those strategies.
But it's still evil, Camille.
It's still evil. I know. Yeah. I'm not saying do that.
We have San on the line. Last caller, because we're going to go over time. Caller, good morning. You're on the air.
Mr. Small.
Yes.
Sawa again. Listen, I listening to that gentleman just now talking about people that rotten in the graves and gone away from here. The past PNM, wherever corruption they did, Mr. Rowley was the first Prime Minister in the history of Trinidad and Tobago to haul in the courts of Trinidad people that stole the poor people, children, money. Right? 8 or 9 of them facing courts here for that. Nobody is talking about the poor people building Wasa, building that they burn, you know. People get money to call for a brigade when that building was fully lit. You ever hear anything about that? Do not trust our indigenous guerrilla movement. We are on the ball. Do the right thing. Let this young man continue to finish what they went all over the world and beg people to come back here and put their money. It is having little hiccups. Those hiccups going to over and people going to get something more in their pocket. Thank you again.
Thanks, brother. Well, it leads to the question, because that's one of the things that's, well, some people, I guess, they believe it to be true and it's a positive, and other people are criticizing the whole concept that, well, it took 10 years for you to figure out how to be in government. But I guess, let me be not so much devil's advocate, but let me just kind of offer a potential explanation to that. Well, the situation was that complicated. It's not like what it was in before.
Right.
You know, what NAR had to go through might be the only time, the closest time where the circumstances were similar, right? And they went to the IMF, and arguably the standard of living in the country was a bit worse than it is now. So they did succeed in maintaining some degree the standard of living, although it's not that it's a healthy position long term that we're in. So do you think there's some merit in that, look, because I do say, it's not that the situation is bad, it's that do you think the PNM made it worse than it had to be?
I think what it is that people wanted to see, or people would like to see, delivery. And I think people feel, or they have a great sense or feeling that the PNM didn't deliver fast enough. They're not saying that the PNM didn't deliver, and there are things that they thought should have been prioritized that weren't prioritized. I don't think people are saying that the PNM didn't do well to stabilize the economy and stuff, but they feel like, okay, you all have stabilized it, but we didn't see any major growth and progression in that. We saw like new industries and that kind of thing, and I think that's what people wanted to see.
Because every politician uses diversification.
Yeah.
Right? Lip service to that. But we have actually yet seen any serious initiative towards diversification. And I guess it's one of the things where we assume we're going to need to not be an energy sector because fossil fuels are going to run out, right? So we're not going to have our economy based on fossil fuels forever. Is that part of it? Because the argument is, well, it's never the right time. We're in trouble now. How are we going to invest in that? But the flip side is, well, we have to start. We're late. We have to start at some point.
But the thing is, I know Prime Minister Stewart Young pointed this out a few weeks ago. He said things are simply taking too long. It's not that they didn't or they don't want to. Like he spoke about the dry docking facility in South, for instance, where he spoke about how long they would have had that project on the cards, and now it's getting approval from the EMA to go out and do the different studies and that kind of thing. And that was one of the things that they touted.
Is it just the bureaucracy?
Yes, the bureaucracy.
Because I say it's not just the politicians. Sometimes it's the public servants, and this is why the public sector, I have argued before, not so much recently, but it needs to be reformed.
A lot of our issues stem from right within the public sector.
Now, how easy would it be to fix it, though?
Remember, the minister is just the face, you know.
Yes.
But the minister just has to sign off and look over and stuff. But
he can't do the paperwork.
Exactly. Public servants are the ones who have to process this for payment, do this approval, do that approval. But they are just the face of the ministry.
The thing is it that there's a lack of will, political or societal? I'm starting to say societal will, not just limited to political will, to fix some of these things? Because right now, a lot of government sectors are basically jobs programs. Not everybody employed by the government actually contributes anything productively. I mean, they even had, that's why there's Dodge in America. It's not just a Trinbagonian phenomenon, right? But to fix the public sector, I guess the labor movement would be like, hold on, what are you trying to fix here? Because you're going to make some of us redundant and retrench us, and then what's going to happen? And we don't like that. The WASA report thing, I find the PSA is overplaying the hand a little bit with regards to that report.
You saw the Minister Young put out a video yesterday where he said they are no longer moving forward. That basically, I remember us speaking about this like 2 years ago.
The politicians blink. They don't want to touch certain things.
They said they've just restructured WASA from the top, and they are no longer moving on with that, basically.
I find that
to be crazy, but yes, it's election, so.
No, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So the public servants, or the public service, not all servants. Some servants, they're doing the work, they're keeping the ship running. But a lot of the slowdown and the inefficiency comes from there. Look, this is my point exactly. It's unpopular, so we don't want to touch it.
We don't want to touch it, yeah.
But then now, we can't deliver on our promises, in part. This is one of the reasons. So it makes us look bad. Like, I don't understand this in the long run, how this is supposed to work.
I myself, I'm just like you, Sean. I don't understand some things, but the public service needs to be reformed. That's the only way we can get things done faster.
This is technically, conceptually, this goes against when you said that the public is being more sophisticated. Now, I do agree with you that they are, just by osmosis at the very least, right? We're going to import ideologies and concepts from abroad, and we're going to start asking questions amongst ourselves. But how we perceive our local politics, it seems like it's still rooted in traditional sense of don't mess with my money.
The thing is, right, people are, not that people aren't willing to change, or our culture isn't willing to change, but it needs to be a culture change. If I were a politician now, and I would have been appointed to a ministry, my first task would be to meet with all the staff and to let them know, listen, this is what we as the government are trying to achieve. We have been voted in. This is what we are trying to achieve. You all are the ones to make things happen for us. How can we work together? How can we as the politician make things better for you as the workers within the ministry so that we can get our stuff done faster? So that's where it needs to start.
But here's a question. Are you going to meet with everybody, or are you going to tell the permanent secretary, look, just pick the ones that actually work, and I'll just meet with them, and we'll just leave the others who don't actually show up to do their job, we'll just kind of ignore them. We're not going to do anything to them. We're just going to leave them alone because I don't have time to waste with people who don't actually work.
No, I would meet with everybody. Remember, people work, yes, they are paid, but people also want to be motivated to do things. If they understand that what they are doing is going to make things better for them in the long run, then they might be willing to do it.
I mean, you know, people aren't going to, because you'll just be the next guy that comes in line that says something with flowery language, and how much are they going to believe what you have to say to change their behavior?
It's not just flowery language, it's about heart and passion. And some of the ministers just don't have heart and passion. The ones who have it, you see them perform a lot better in their ministries.
I can't disagree with that. I have heard at least one thing behind the scenes that goes very much in line with what you just said there. But I don't know. I think, unfortunately, and it's not just here. We saw this with COVID, when people were being paid because they lost their job and they were being paid so much money because the Democrats, and this is where compassion sometimes could be an evil, they said, no, we need to make sure these people could live. The problem is they're like, well, then why do I need to get a new job? I could just continue off of your grants and subsidies. And that, I think, is happening here as well, where people eventually, culturally, I don't necessarily think it happened overnight. Maybe some of it did. But it's so ingrained now, the freeness, that there are going to be a subsection of the public sector, not the whole thing, but a subsection is going to feel entitled to collecting a check and not actually doing any work.
And that's where, I would again say, that's where the motivation is lacking. Because people, listen, it's not that the government
they'll be cynical. They're like, this is not going to help me, because nothing ever works in government.
I wouldn't say so. I think it's about heart and passion, as I again mentioned, and I think it's about getting people on board. Getting people on board to do what needed to be done. I
have made a similar argument nationally. Would you say that this is something not just for the public sector, but for the nation as a whole? To have to get them on board with regards to the messaging and to get them on board with the mission and the vision?
You need to get everyone on board with your mission and your vision. If you ask someone, what's the vision of the government, any government, what would have been their vision, what's their mission, what do they intend to achieve over the next 5 years? They probably don't even know, because it hasn't been sold to them in that way. Everything is just about election and us being elected for the next 5 years.
And the promises are very short-term,
yes,
immediate.
The promises are very short-term and immediate. But if you tell people, okay, this is what we need to achieve in order to achieve this, and this is how we're doing it. So step 1, we are going to do this. Step 2, this is what we need to do. If you say to them, if you say to public servants, okay, we are trying to make the public service more efficient and more effective. In that, it may mean that we may ask you all to probably put in longer hours at times. We may switch up things and say, okay, we're going to open on a Saturday. You have to come out twice a month, and you'll probably get a day off during that week that you're working twice a month, or 2 Saturdays for the month or something. You have to get people on board. You have to sell your plan and your vision.
Be proactive.
Yes,
I mean,
be proactive.
The flip side, this is a society where they paved the year of the election because the public tends to forget that they paved if you pave earlier on in the term.
Correct.
I will argue we have short attention spans as culturally, as a people. So that's my one pushback. But I mean, I understand that it's not going to change overnight, and this is what you should be doing regardless. So I could agree with you on that wholeheartedly. Somebody has to start the process. Correct. But the last thing, I was going to end the show, but we did get a comment. The commenter brings up an interesting point amongst a whole host of other things. We need leaders who prioritize transparency, integrity, accountability, and the welfare of the people, judicial system, and constitutional reform. The last part, I think that's a given. I just don't know how easy that would be. The first part, this is one of my bugbears. With regards to transparency and accountability, I feel like a lot of public persons, not just politicians, but even police, fire, etc., defense force, even private sector, they don't understand transparency and accountability and how it could be a benefit if I'm transparent and if I show that I'm holding myself accountable or somebody is holding me accountable. When I say things, people could trust it more than if I kind of hide things and then, why you don't believe me? Well, because you hide too much. We don't know what to believe.
You're absolutely correct in saying that. And that's because people, you see, when you are transparent and when you are accountable, you get buy-in. So, one instance, you get buy-in when you are like that. One instance, right? When the Dragon gas deal, when they were informed that the Dragon gas deal had ended, when Prime Minister Stuart came out and he said, okay, this deal has ended, that was an opportune time, and that's a time when people would have bought into what he's saying, and people actually got on board saying that. That's one of the few times in the last couple of years that I've seen the nation actually react to this, to actually speak about it, actually say, well, okay, this has happened. How do we now pivot from it?
Right.
Yes, buy-in. You need buy-in.
Meanwhile, it's not the only thing in the energy basket. Just to close. But I'm curious. I find the government is too defensive on Dragon, and it makes it seem as though this is the be-all and end-all of their energy plans, when it's technically not. But they're so defensive over it, and so defensive against any criticism of the situation. They themselves are kind of propping it up too much and setting themselves up to kind of... Why is it so important? It's not the only bullet in the chamber. It's not the only tool in the box.
I think because, remember, they are looking at things that they are looking at the short term, the medium term, and the long term. And so I think that would have been one of their things that in the medium term that they knew that they could have gotten gas onshore.
But there's other gas coming in 2 years, and they're not really speaking about it.
But in terms of the volume, I
mean, I guess.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, we are way over time, so I mean, we can't explore any further. I just wanted to get that last note in because, hopefully we'll have more of Cameron Pascal moving forward after the election, and that will be exciting to hear his opinions on a regular basis. You see, they love you already. They love you already. You've been gone for so long, and one appearance, bam. So thanks to all the callers for all the engagement, and here I was doubting the people, but it was good to see that you're still willing to be engaged in the process. This is just one small part, though. I would encourage you not to just limit yourself to Talking Point alone, but to go to other platforms, to engage on other forums, and to engage with the people that you meet respectfully. So Camille, thanks for joining me once again.
Sure, Sean. Thanks very much. It's been a pleasure. It's been a while as well.
Yeah. This was good. Folks, have a good day. Stay safe. Remember your allegiance to the Republic and to each other. And never forget that it's nice to be nice. No matter how high tensions are over this elections, Trinidad and Tobago will have to exist the following day. So let's try to come together once the dust settles. And I'll continue to say that. And I'll continue to say it after the elections. But until then, we will see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.
WESN.
For every creed and race, we must look beyond the colors. Don't miss WESN's election coverage as we break down all the results and consider the way forward to the next chapter of Trinidad and Tobago. With Dr. Shane Mohammed, Karen Nunez-Shashera, Camille A.O. Pascal, Ashraf Ali, David Abdullah, Curtis Williams, and other business leaders across Trinidad and Tobago. Hosted by veteran journalist Andy Johnson, alongside myself, Sean Michael Small. Looking beyond the colors for election 2025. Your voice, your vote, your future.